What's good, YouTube? Freedom by Productions here. Right now, I'm going to react to Marvelous videos. This is one about 9 forgotten 90s horror series. Let's go. I love my horror series, man.
The 1990s are not
And I'm
counted
a
among
90s
the
kid,
most
so
remembered decades by horror fans. If the
that's a
preceding
lie.
decades of the 70s and 80s saw a spring of slasher films defining the genre, the
80s brought on the slasher genre. I agree with that. It started in the 70s. It got popularized in the 80s. But the 90s was all about horror. Come on, man.
succeeding decade of the 2010s saw the introduction of what one can define as elevated horror, which was marked by experimentations with the genre. However, the 1990s was the time when new technological developments came
The Outer
to the
Limits?
forefront, which saw the usage of new graphic and camera techniques to
I don't know what
heighten
that is.
reality and, therefore, the scares. The decade also saw the creation of new franchises in the horror world. Even though many of the horrors released during the decade were indeed scary, they
I know what that
gradually
is. Can't think of
faded
the name.
into forgetfulness due to the genre-defining status of the preceding and succeeding decade in the genre. Today, we will be exploring 9 such
Outer
horror
Limits,
series
Ariana,
from the
of course,
decade that were forgotten
American
but
Gothic,
are really nightmarish.
Poltergeist,
So, yes, let's dive into the world of horror. But
Nightmare
before we go
Cafe.
into our explanation, we have a very small request.
I
If
watched
you
it.
like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a
Tales from the
lot.
Crypt
Thank
was
you.
another one.
Let's begin. The Outer Limits. The Outer
The Outer
Limits is a
Limits, of
TV
course.
series that spanned 7 seasons, starting from 1995 till 2002.
It came back out in
The series was
2002.
planned as a revival of the classic series by the same name, which aired between 1963 and 1965. Each season of the series was marked by an anthology format, which
Outer Limits is
combined
good.
in the finale of the season. Attempts to bring out the series started in the 1980s, inspired by the success of sci-fis such as Star Trek. Initially, MGM paired up with Trilogy Productions before Sci-Fi overtook the production of the 7th and final season. Therefore, a marked difference in the explicit content can be observed between the first 6 and the last seasons. The Outer Limits differed from the original series in terms of deviating from the villain of the week concept. This is a concept of a villain or an antagonist who makes entry only in one episode of a multi-episode
It's
series,
like Twilight Zone.
mostly in the last episode. The new Outer Limits instead focused on specific scientific concepts, combined with a
aliens.
moralistic narration at the beginning and end of each episode. The concepts ranged from artificial intelligence to nuclear fallout to aliens, everything that can be imagined.
It was
in
all
sci-fi.
sci-fi.
Most of the episodes were spooky and intriguing at the same time, starting from the initial background score. With all the positives counted, the series still fails to maintain consistency, with a disparity between the quality of different episodes. If most of them featured extremely well-crafted episodes, some were failures, and this inconsistency often led us to doubting whether they were all part of the same franchise. Freaky Stories. Freaky
Never heard of Freaky
Stories is
Stories.
a Canadian animation anthology series that
Canadian.
aired
I'm
between
not Canadian.
1997
American.
and 1999, spanning 3 seasons and 35
Never even
episodes.
heard of it,
The
seen it.
development of the series began in 1991 when creator Steve Schneer's idea was
But yo, give more respect to Outer Limits, man. I grew up on Outer Limits in the 90s. I loved it. It was my Twilight Zone for the 90s growing up. Loved Outer Limits, man. Outer Limits was great. He tried to diss it a little bit towards the end, but no, Outer Limits was great. And it had to end. It ran for years. It was great, man. And I ain't gonna lie to you. I tried to watch the black and white Outer Limits. I couldn't do it, man. Shout out to the 90s Outer Limits, man. It was great, man. Because they had no Twilight Zone in the 90s. They had Twilight Zones in the 80s, which is one of my favorites. And then they had Twilight Zone in the 2000s, early 2000s. But, yeah, man, shout out to Outer Limits.
was accepted by YTV in 1991. The series was first featured on TV during YTV's Halloween special schedule in 1995. The first episode was made using traditional animation techniques, but most others were finished using digibeta. The series is known for its characteristic opening
Never heard
and
of this.
ending lines pitched in by the narrators, Larry DeBug, a cockroach, and his sidekick, Maurice the Maggot. The episode started and finished with the phrase, "This is a true story, and it happened to a friend of mine."
A lot of Canadian shows we don't get in America, even though we're right next to each other, and you would think that like it will correspond with each other, but a lot of Canadian shows we don't get in America. Some shows we do get though, but they pretend they're American shows, like Are You Afraid of the Dark? Right? It's a show that takes place in Canada, Canadian actors for the most part, kids, but they're pretending they're in America because it's cheaper to shoot in Canada than it is in America. So a lot of American shows will go to Canada and shoot their shows and get their actors from Canada. So you have like a lot of Canadian shows that pretend to be in America, but really they're in Canada. That's why it's always cold. They always have jackets. You can always see their breath in these series and TV shows. And they're pretending they're like in California, but you can see their breath. And it's like no palm trees or nothing in the background. But it's like, yeah, we're over here in California, or we're somewhere like in like Minnesota, or just ain't random places in America. Like, yeah, we're hanging out over here in Ohio or Mississippi, but it's like freezing cold, and they're wearing tank tops trying to pretend that they're hanging out somewhere like in Florida. No, but yeah, man. A lot of shows we didn't get, or at least I know I never watched. That came from Canada, except for shows that was like popular on Nickelodeon or Disney Channel when I was a kid growing up, which was like technically Canadian shows, but they're meant to be for Americans. So,
In the words of Larry, just because they never happened doesn't mean they ain't true. These sentences established the background setting for the upcoming storyline. The episodes featured stories inspired by urban legends. Even though the series was intended for kids, they featured mature elements, including gross twists and black comedy. It should be kept in mind that the series came out at a time when family and kid shows were not as censored as they are today. Another notable feature of the series was
the
that it
90s.
didn't feature a definite style or even a common background score. Even the animation styles varied across each episode. This was done so as to keep each episode original and, therefore, to not
kinda
go
wanna see
beyond
it
the
now.
attention span of the audience.
They're selling me on the
Freaky
show.
Stories was quite successful, with the show, all in all, being an entertaining watch. Millennium. X-Files is a famous series that doesn't need much
Millennium.
introduction. Chris Carter is remembered today for X-Files. But when X-Files was developing its cult following, Carter created another series that was much applauded during its release, Millennium, which first aired on
I remember
October
Millennium.
25th, 1996 on Fox, was a critically
1996?
acclaimed horror series that, towards its end, lost popularity and gradually fell into oblivion.
I don't
Mark
remember it.
Snow, who is also remembered for his contribution in X-Files, provided the background score for Millennium. It was ranked 87 in Rotten Tomatoes' 100 Best Sci-Fi TV Shows of All Time in 2018. Millennium centers around Frank Black, a former FBI agent who has the talent to see the world through the perspective of murderers and serial killers. His role as a freelance forensic profiler brings into play different characters. Black lives with his wife Catherine and daughter Jordan. Although Carter denies being a psychic, Jordan's inheritance of her father's abilities indicates otherwise. The central point of action and mystery, which contributes to the later horrors in the series, is the Millennium Group, for whom Black
I think I just won my taxes.
Oh yeah?
I just switched from TurboTax to H&R Block. It was so easy.
You mean I don't have to go back?
Black worked in the past. As the series gradually develops, the mystery revolving around the Millennium Group unfolds, causing supernatural events to make an entry. Even though the series initially had an impressive run, starting with its pilot episode, which was watched by an estimated 17.72 million viewers, it was eventually stopped by the third season due to a declining viewership. Later, Black and Jordan make an appearance in X-Files Season 7 episode titled Millennium. Millennium is a series that explores dark conspiracy theories with offbeat humor, which makes it both compelling and a nightmarish watch. Erie, Indiana. Erie, Indiana is a horror science fiction series that ran on NBC from 1991 to 1993. Jose Rivera and Carl Schaefer paired up to create the series, spanning 19 episodes across a single season. The series aired twice after finishing its original run in 1993. First from 1993 to 1996, then in 1997. The first two times it aired on the Disney Channel, while the third time it was shown on the Fox Kids Network. The series developed a cult following of its own, which led to the release of its
I'm a horror
spin-off,
fan, man. I'm into horror movies and stuff like that.
Dimension. Marshall
And supernatural
Teller
movies.
is the protagonist of the series. As the title suggests, the series deals with the strange happenings in the namesake town of Erie, Indiana, with a population of 16,661. The happenings start coming to the fore after Teller moves to the town with his family. He befriends Simon Holmes, one of the few people who are actually normal in the town. The strange incidents include a group of intelligent dogs planning to take over the world, and a tornado hunter who reminds us of Captain Ahab's character from Moby Dick. Numerous urban legends also make entries, elevating the spookiness of the series. The series can be branded as a nightmarish comedy, and its absurdity was quite new to the screens. Even though primarily meant for kids, the series was a hit amongst adults too, which speaks volumes about why it should be watched. Poltergeist: The Legacy. Poltergeist: The Legacy is a horror television series that first aired on Showtime before being syndicated. The series ran from April 21st, 1996 to November 12th, 1999. It took almost 7 years before the series was released on DVD on February 7th, 2006.
Did we have Showtime
the
back
long
in?
delay
I don't think
is
we
a
had Showtime
partial
back in the
reason
90s.
why
We
the
probably
series was
did. Yeah, we
forgotten.
did.
The storyline
I never
features
watched
a
this, though.
secretive society, the Legacy, which was founded in 6th century England and is dedicated to protecting humanity from supernatural forces of evil. They do so by collecting dangerous and ancient knowledge and artifacts and by solving paranormal problems. Even though, according to the legend, over time, the group grew and has branches across the world, the series focuses on the San Francisco branch called the San Francisco House. According to the structure of the group, each branch is led by one who is known as a precept.
Just my opinion, just looking at it, it was kind of trash.
Led by precept Dr.
Could have been good, though.
Rain. The San Francisco House is based in a castle on Angel Island in San Francisco Bay. Even though the series was forgotten from popular culture, it commands a very active and dedicated, albeit small, online fan group. The series does not feature any horrific incidents and instead relies on the mystery-induced tension to create the scares. By bringing in personal drama to play, the series becomes an entertaining watch indeed. American Gothic. American Gothic, first aired on September 22nd, 1995, is an American horror series created by Sean Cassidy. The series aired on CBS till July 11th, 1996, before it was stopped.
I think I kind of remember this.
The series was nominated for multiple awards, including the Saturn Award. The series is based in a fictional town in South Carolina named Trinity. The series is centered around the lives of Caleb Temple and the town's
that's the little kid from
Lucas Buck.
Tokyo
Things are
Drift.
not as they seem, and Buck hides his dark persona under the guise of being affable and charismatic. He is a murderous rapist who uses his supernatural powers to fulfill his desires, which include manipulating people. Caleb Temple is the biological son of Sheriff Buck, but carries a dark history around his birth. Buck, in the past, had raped Temple's mother before the eyes of his sister before murdering his sister and manipulating his father to commit suicide. Due to the trauma associated associated with the brutal rape, Temple's mother, Merlin, commits suicide after his birth. Things start to heat up as the newly arrived Dr. Crower teams up
What kind of
with
show is
Temple's
this?
cousin, Gail Emery, to investigate the unnatural deaths of Merlin, her husband, and her daughter. The series follows the scuffle between Buck's influence in Temple's life and Emery and Dr. Crower's attempts to bring him out of Buck's influence, being helped by Merlin's ghost. The series is among the many that have come out following the success
I
of
can barely keep up with
X-Files,
this show.
but
That
has
show's
made its
crazy.
own place in the genre. It leaves a haunting presence after the
Yeah,
launch.
that show
It is a
was too
surprise
crazy.
that the series did not extend beyond a single season.
What?
Forever Night. Forever Night is a Canadian
Don't know what
television
this is.
series that ran on
Canadian.
CBS and USA networks from May 5th, 1992 to May 17th, 1996. The first 2 seasons premiered on CBS, while the last season was aired on USA Network.
Wow, see?
Barney
Yeah.
Cohen and James D. Perriott were the creators of the series. Nick Knight is the main
I
character
think I
in the
remember
series.
seeing this on
He is
USA
a Toronto
before.
police officer who works the night shift with his partner, but unknown to most of the other characters, he is actually an 800-year-old vampire who
I
took
think
up
I
the
remember
role
seeing
of
this
police officer
before
as a means to
on
redeem
USA.
himself for his past actions. In most of the series, the only human being aware of his situation is his friend and medical examiner, Natalie Lambert. Nick tries to search for a means to become human again, but things get complicated.
I ain't gonna lie
and
to you,
tense
man.
as other vampires,
A lot of Canadian
Lucien
shows are
LaCroix
weird,
and
but cool,
Jeanette
man.
Ducharme
They're good.
make entries into the storyline. The series was nominated for multiple awards, including the prestigious
And they always try to
Gemini Awards
pretend
and
they're in
Golden
America,
Wheel
but
Award, winning once in
we know they're in
1996.
Canada. It's always
Each
cold.
episode in the series
You can
is
always see
an
their breath.
independent unit of its own, even though the series maintains some consistent themes. The episode-centric nature of the series was a characteristic of the pre-2000 TV series, which centered around episodes rather than the whole series. The series, in spite of dealing with supernatural events, is as realistic as possible, with problems like racism, drug abuse, and medical
Racism,
research
huh?
being explored. The series is classic and thought-provoking, even though for some, the climax can come
The
across
racist
as
vampires?
off track. Nightmare Cafe. Nightmare Cafe
I
is
watched
an
this.
American television
Okay.
series that aired from January
Yes.
29th to April 3rd of 1992 on NBC,
Hold
which
on.
was then
I ended up watching this series later in life. I didn't watch it when it aired in the 90s. I never knew this existed. But I'm such a horror buff. Years later, I think like I was just trying to find like old school horror shows I'd ever seen. And I came across this and I watched the complete, I think it's only 1 season. I watched the whole complete thing and I was like, my mind was blown that there was a show that had Freddy Krueger himself being one of the stars in the show. Well, he's pretty much like the what do you call it? He's like the narrator of the show, whatever. But it blew my mind, man, and I can't believe I didn't know about this in the 90s, because I grew up in the 90s. I'm a 90s kid. A lot of stuff I didn't know about because I was watching a lot of Nickelodeon and stuff like that growing up. But man, I wish I would have known about this as a kid. I would have been obsessed with this show. But I watched it later on as an adult, but I know what this show is.
and discontinued due to low audience ratings. The series cannot be fit into a single genre, even though it is primarily a mystical fantasy. It often delves into elements of dark humor, horror, and sometimes cheeky comedy. The series featured 6 episodes. The series opens with the characters Frank Nolan and Faye Peranovic transported to a mysterious all-night cafe after coming close to dying. But later on, they realized that they had actually died but were returned back to life by the cafe so as to correct something they did wrong in their life. After correcting themselves, they stay on as the cafe's new cook and waitress. They aid the owner of the cafe, Blackie, in giving second chances to many. However, the main character in the series is the cafe itself, capable of transporting itself to different locations and creating portals between it and other worlds, including outer space and even heaven. Further, the cafe often makes silent ultimate wishes come true, even if it puts the person in trouble. The cafe can be seen as both protagonist and antagonist, owing to its offering of second chances and helping out people, but at the same time, often being mischievous. The effects used in the series were outdated even for its time, but the series was quite imaginative and stylish, which could not be explored further due to it being discontinued in just 6 episodes.
Yeah.
FlexJobs is the #1 job site to find remote, work from home, and flexible schedule job opportunities.
Swamp Thing, the character from the Vertigo imprint of DC, was adapted
Yeah.
on TV on July 27, 1990, extending to 3 seasons. At one point, it was the highest-rated original series on USA Network. The series, however, followed an uneven pattern as the executive producer, Joseph Stefano,
You know what? I
left
never
the
knew
series
Swamp Thing
after
had
the
a
first
series in
season.
the
The
90s.
series went through a makeover
I watched
with
the
the
movies as a
introduction of a
kid.
new team who made it even more dark. Another feature that started in the second season was the focus on anthological stories, focusing on many characters other than just the protagonist. Nevertheless, the storyline primarily revolved around Dr. Alec
I never knew
Holland's
had a
life, who was
series.
converted into the Swamp Thing. He became the Swamp Thing after a terrible incident involving catching fire, reacting with strange chemicals, and being dumped into Louisiana swamps by the antagonist Anton Arcane. It is here, in the swamp, that Alec undergoes mutation, becoming a powerful being. The Swamp Thing was more than a good guy fighting evil series, as the episodes were often sprinkled with messages. The yearning to become human leads us into terrains of emotions. Further, the Swamp Thing often cares for and loves all living beings, which has a profound impact on his approach to life. Nonetheless, the series lacked overtly dramatic or sensational episodes, with the unevenness in the making sticking out throughout the seasons. It was successful in making a dedicated cult following of its own, leading to its revival. Marvelous conclusion. The 1990s was a period when
The hell is that?
experimentations with different tropes of horror and the supernatural were at a peak, primarily due to the popularity of television, which brought
I don't know
spectacle
what
to
this is.
home.
Never heard
This
of this
led
at
to
all.
multiple and diverse sets of series, making an entry and quick exits, and on rare occasions,
Hey, she
becoming
looks familiar.
popular and long series like The X-Files. Many of the series mentioned in the list are associated with at least some of the 80s and 90s
Tales from the
kids,
Crypt,
but
Buffy the
later
Vampire
forgotten
Slayer,
due to their short runs and gradual fading
X-Files.
into oblivion. The short span of the series sometimes led to the storylines getting less explored and the audience being left wanting more. But what could have been the status of these series if they continued for a bit longer can only be a matter of assumptions. Which series would you like to see a remake of? Tell us in the comments. And if you liked our content, don't forget
Oh,
to
that was
leave
it.
a
I thought it
like
was
and
another
subscribe
series.
to
My
us
bad.
if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe out there. Thanks, everyone.
Oh man, yeah. Shout out, man, to Marvel videos, man. Yeah. A lot of these series I didn't watch. I didn't know about. Some of them I did, and like I said before, man. I'm American. We get a lot of Canadian shows that come to America. Was supposed to be American shows, but we know they shot in Canada because it's cheaper to shoot in Canada. So like Are You Afraid of the Dark? These supposed to be American kids, it's supposed to be American show, but they shot in Canada, and these Canadian kids, and they're pretending they're somewhere in America, but you can always see their breath is always freezing cold, and they pretending like they're like in California or Florida or somewhere in America. You're like, no, you're not. Even though you have a tank top on, you can tell like these Canadian people making these kids freeze to death by wearing these short sleeve shirts and shorts, knowing they're in Canada during the wintertime. But yeah, man. A lot of these shows I didn't watch, don't know because they're Canadian shows. They never got around to American shows like that. But some of the shows I did watch, like the one with the Freddy Krueger guy and certain things, and Erie, Indiana. Love Erie, Indiana. Love that shit. Loved it growing up as a kid. Thought it was great. They did a spin-off on it. It was whack. They did they tried to do like another version of it. They did a spin-off and they tried to do like another version of it, I think. It worked out. But when we was kids, man, supernatural horror stuff in the 90s was great. Uh, Shouts out to Are You Afraid of the Dark, Erie, Indiana, Goosebumps. Um, I can't think of anything else right now. But shout out to those shows. Those shows I grew up on. And yeah, man. With that being said, man, comment down below, man. Let me know what you think about this. Uh, Subscribe to the channel, man. Freedom Out Productions on the road to 1K. Like always, man, thank you guys for watching. Till next time, like always.